Today on Monson Made This, I have a very basic recipe for you.
Brian Little.
Japan. Welcome to Monson Made This, where I, Michael, make vegan recipes, and you are in for a very special treat today. I am going to be making a holiday, Halloween-inspired salted pumpkin spice cookie. Now, the recipe of this kind of evolved out of my chocolate chip cookie recipe, which I will have linked above, and just through swapping out a few ingredients, I wound up from a chocolate chip cookie recipe to a pumpkin spice cookie recipe. So it's really easy. Basically just whisk some wet ingredients together, whisk some dry ingredients together, combine them, bake them, and we have cookies. So let's get right into it. I'm gonna start with the dry ingredients just so I don't have to clean my whisk. I already have flour here in this bowl. To that, I'm adding baking soda, a little bit of salt, which these are salted pumpkin spice cookies, but the real salt will be the treat on top. And then I'm adding some pumpkin pie spice. And I'm just going to mix these together with a whisk. If you didn't have a whisk, you could just use a fork. It does just the same. As I said, this is inspired by my chocolate chip cookie recipe, which also started out with brown sugar. To that, I'm adding some granulated sugar. In that chocolate chip cookie recipe, I used a aquafaba egg, but this time I'm using some ground flax meal, and then some coconut milk to create our egg substitute. Adding a little bit of vanilla extract. And then in that chocolate chip cookie recipe, I used coconut oil in place of butter. Well, today I am using pumpkin puree in place of that coconut oil. And that's it for the liquid ingredients. Just gonna whisk those together. If you wanted to make this completely, I guess pretty much fat-free, you could just swap out the coconut milk for any other like lower fat plant-based milk. I like the coconut milk because it does add a little bit of flavor, but it also gives a little bit of fat to this recipe, which otherwise doesn't have any. My liquid ingredients are all together, my dry ingredients are together, now we just gotta put the dry into the wet. Oftentimes you'll see recipes having you add one to the other, and how do you know if you should be adding the dry to the wet or the wet to the dry? Well, the answer is whichever one is in the bigger bowl is what you add the other one to. So I'm adding the dry to the wet. And I'm just gonna mix this together until all the flour is incorporated, and then I will be adding chocolate chips. I do want to add some pumpkin seeds, but Ben doesn't want them, so I will not be adding them today. But you could definitely add pumpkin seeds if you wanted. All right, this is pretty well combined. Now I'm going to add chocolate chips, which is quite subjective, so add as many as you would like. I'll probably add about maybe a half cup. And you can see that the baking soda is already activating. These are kind of a cakey-like cookie, so they will rise. And you can see that rising happening already, so we want to move pretty quickly to get these into the oven so we don't lose any of that lift. All right, let's form our cookies. Our batter is ready to go. It is on the softer side compared to a lot of other cookie doughs, and that's because it is going to kind of spread a little bit and puff up. It is a cakier type of cookie. So let's use our cookie scoop to form these into 12 cookies. You could easily make these, this is about a 1/4 cup scoop. You could easily make like 24 smaller ones. That would be good also if you had more people to feed. And I'm just gonna use this scoop to get these all out on the sheet and throw them in the oven, which is already preheated to 350. There's just enough dough left in the bowl to snack on while the cookies bake. I'm gonna put these in the oven. They're gonna cook for about 15 minutes. What we want is them to be a little puffed up and to be maybe a little bit brown around the bottom. But when we touch them, we want them to puff back up. We don't want them to sink in. We want them to be cakey. So let's put them in the oven. Our cookies are done. Now, they were actually in here for about 20 minutes, which is longer than I expected. When I originally tested this recipe, I did it in my smart oven, and it was only 15 minutes. But when I touch them, they're not sinking down. They feel like they're fluffy and cakey. So I'm gonna set these aside here. After about maybe 5 minutes, I'll take them off this and put them on the drying rack. And then while these cool, I will make the glaze to go on top that will hold the salt for these salted pumpkin spice cookies. This glaze is really simple. I already have a bowl here of some powdered sugar, and I'm gonna add just a dash of pumpkin pie spice to that. And then for our liquid, I'm going to be using pumpkin puree. I'm gonna start out with about a tablespoon and mix this together. Now you want to add the liquid or the pumpkin to the powdered sugar first, because a little bit goes a long way. And once it gets to the texture that I want, well, basically I can add more liquid, but it's hard to do it the other way. So it's coming together here. Now this looks a little bit thick, so I'm probably gonna add just a little bit more of the pumpkin puree. I want this more of a glaze. I don't want it really like a frosting. I'm adding just another maybe like teaspoon. So I want this to just kind of make the tops of these cookies shiny. I'm not looking for a thick frosting. And this has a nice drizzle, beautiful color, beautiful spicy sweetness. And this is just gonna hang out on the side until the cookies are cool. The cookies are cooled, the glaze is made, and I have a little rig set up here so that when I brush the glaze on, anything can drip down onto the silpat for easy cleanup. So I'm just gonna go ahead with this little brush in the glaze and brush it on top of all of them, and then sprinkle a little bit of salt on top, and maybe even a few pumpkin seeds just for extra decoration. The last thing that we're gonna do here is add some maldon salt. Now this is a really large grain salt. You could use a large grain kosher salt if you don't have maldon salt. This just is gonna add a little bit of like a little crunch, a little salty burst that just helps to balance out the sweetness and bring out the flavors. And we're just gonna put a couple grains, trying not to overdo it, before the glaze dries. These salted pumpkin spice cookies are ready to devour. Now, if you were planning on taking them to a party or traveling with them, I would let them hang out on the counter for a little bit longer, just so that that glaze dries and they won't stick all together. But otherwise, these are so good, delicious. If you have people that might be reluctant about the salt on it, leave it off, but I promise it's such a great addition, brings out all of the flavors in the cookies. So let's give them a taste. It is my favorite part of the show, where I get to eat the food. Look how cute these cookies are. They got a nice shine to them from the glaze and from the salt. And these haven't fully dried, so they are still a little bit tacky, but look how beautiful they are in the center, nice and cakey. This one doesn't have a ton of chocolate chips in it, but I'm okay with that. The cookie itself isn't like cloyingly sweet. It's got great flavor, it's got a sweetness, but it's not like something that you're like, ooh, that's too sweet. I can't eat a ton of that. The glaze brings up the sweetness, the salt balances it out, brings out some more of the flavors. Trust me, you are gonna love these. And it's so strange, if you see the chocolate chip cookie recipe that these were sort of made out of, they're a completely different entity. Those ones are flat and really chewy, and these are fluffy and cakey. But just by swapping out basically one ingredient, you get a completely different cookie. So if you give these a try, comment down below, let me know what you thought of them. Bring them to a Halloween party. You can even probably bring them to a Thanksgiving party. And speaking of Halloween parties, I have one to attend later this month, maybe even 2. So I need to come up with a costume idea. If you have any ideas of what I should be for Halloween, comment that below as well. Like this video if you like it, subscribe if you have not subscribed. I will be doing a short little video of cookie eating over on my Patreon, which is patreon.com/monsonmadethis. There's also a link below, and you can subscribe over there and help support this channel by watching my eating videos, which I call Monson ate this. So thank you all for watching. I will see you next time with another recipe video. I'll also be talking about what I have planned for the next month or so over on my Patreon channel, so check that out if you're interested in where this channel is gonna go up through the holidays. I think that's it. I'm excited to eat these cookies. Thank you all for watching. Have a great week, and I will see you next time.